Well, good evening. Had a little bit of excitement tonight leading up to the show. My scheduled guest this evening was a fellow well known on the internet as AlienScientist. Jeremy Rys is his name. And I hope he's okay, because usually he's a very dependable guest, and when he says he's going to be there, he's there. And coming right up to moments before showtime, he's no show. But a friend of mine has graciously volunteered to be my guest tonight. A fellow that many in my regular audience will know. A fellow by the name of Moray King. He's a published author. He's written tomes on alternative energy and comes at it from a fairly unique perspective, and I think you're going to enjoy the discussion tonight. One quick public service announcement. I should get out of the way right away. This will indeed be the last Alternative Energy Hour. Yeah. I will still be doing my Thursday evening broadcasts as regularly scheduled, but I'm going to take June off, and chances are there will be 2 weeks in June where I do not do a regularly scheduled Smart Scarecrow show. I have some personal business that I need to tend to, and frankly, stuff that I've been putting off that has built up on me, and I'm just going to have to take care of it. I will return to this Monday night broadcast in July with a slightly different format, and you'll just have to stay tuned and see how all that goes. But in any case, right now, I'm going to bring in Mr. Moray King, my guest for the evening. Please welcome him to the Alternative Energy Hour. Moray, are you there, sir?
Yes, Gary, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, considering how many gotchas I had this evening, I was not really sure that when I took you off mute, you were going to be there.
Well, hopefully I'll be alien enough with my ideas to keep everyone entertained and be worthy of the alien scientist substitute.
Well, Moray, you've been a guest on my show previously, and frankly, it's good to have you back. And frankly, it's really been too long since we've talked. And to the audience, Moray and I did not have an opportunity to set this up. We do not have any pre-planned agenda, so you're getting this extemporaneous and off the cuff. We are officially winging it. What did you want to talk about tonight, Moray? You got anything, a real hot button that you've been following that you think is worthy of discussion?
Yeah, in fact, I'd like to start by giving a nice shout out to Russ Rys. You've had him on your show. He did an extraordinary good piece in Extraordinary Technology magazine, overviewing the PAP engine, overviewing the plasma type of charged clusters and the plasmoids that appear to be in the PAP engine. And I was absolutely thrilled to see this piece because it was very much on the same page that I've been touting for years, is that the plasmoid structure itself has some seemingly magical type properties as far as the amount of energy they seem to manifest, an effect called anomalous acceleration or excessive acceleration that Ken Shoulders has observed, and recently Mark LeClaire has also observed that is completely beyond our science. That such a form, this vortex ring of plasma.
Well, now, I was going to challenge you on that, Moray, because there's going to be a lot of folks in the audience who aren't going to have any idea what you're talking about when you're talking about plasmoids and so on. We got to get this down to a level where the average folks out there can understand it. How would you describe this thing? I mean, can you get a picture in somebody's mind how they would visualize this thing?
Yeah, it looks like a torus, a donut.
Looks like a donut.
Like a slinky turned on itself.
But it's made up of
plasma.
Now, that is the fourth state of matter. It's neither a gas, nor a solid, nor a liquid. And what are the characteristics of this plasma?
Normally, it's ionized. We have electrons circulating in a vortex form, and the vortex closes on itself. Imagine a slinky closing on itself. And the electrons oscillate around the vortex as they go through the hole of the donut. The ions themselves can also oscillate, and it's associated with a lot of energy anomalies. A lot of people that get into this free energy research and things like that often cite the vortex ring of the plasma form as being the extraordinary key to getting into pumping the vacuum energy or the 0 point energy. And this notion that these plasmoids could have excess energy coming from the vacuum, I would say, is out of the paradigm of standard science. It's in the paradigm of the esoteric community. The recent video "Thrive" by Foster Gamble, which I highly recommend, by the way, also is on the same page with this idea that these plasmoid structures exhibit anomalous energy, and it's kind of been the theme of my work. I've had 3 books on 0 point energy, and I keep coming back to this plasmoid form. Seems to be the key to getting excess energy from the vacuum. Something that nearly, I think, most of the standard scientific community completely reject as a possibility, as a hypothesis.
Now, these plasmoids, obviously, you got to create these things. Do they? What I'm trying to get to is, how would one devise a proof that you were able to extract more energy from these plasmoid forms than it took to create them in the first place? I mean, that seems to be the stumbling block in a lot of this supposed free energy research, is that you get something going that's really cool and interesting, but how do you devise an experiment that can prove that this thing is actually a positive energy generation instead of just a fancy way to burn more? I mean, I get into that with the tokamak reactors. I mean, they've been working on those things for 30 years, and they've yet to show one that really had a significant amount of excess energy being produced, and that's billions of dollars they've spent on those things and gotten nowhere. How would you react to that?
I think the only convincing proof on such a out of the paradigm notion as tapping the vacuum energy, it has to be a self-running system. And not only that, because people can make frauds and tricks like in their experimental setups, it has to be so simple as a self-running system that it can be readily replicated at universities, ideally replicated by hobbyists. That's why I like the open source initiative around some of this research, and Russ Rys is really trying to start that around the PAP engine, is get the shared information and get that device actually built. In my opinion, I think the PAP engine is extremely difficult. It's difficult typically to work with plasmoids in general. Ken Shoulders has done a stellar job over the years of studying the tiny ones and is building evidence that there's something there. My hope is, and one of the strong hypotheses that I've been pursuing for the last few years, is that this phenomena is occurring in the HHO experiments and these electrolyzer experiments that you're very familiar with, that these forms could actually form up in around a water cluster, a submicron size water cluster that acts like a template.
All right, Moray, do you hear the music coming in the background there?
I do.
All right, Moray, that was a good place to have a break. Folks, please do stand by. We'll be back right after these important commercial announcements with Moray King. Have a good evening, and here we go. Well, I'm not sure I'm really qualified to rule the world. I sometimes even wonder if I can rule my own household properly. But in any case, Moray King, during the break, we had an interesting question come in regarding the the PAP engine. The PAP engine's been one of those technologies that a lot of people have been tinkering with for a long time. But the last time we had any indication that anybody had actually produced an effective one that actually ran as advertised, was back during the days of Joseph Papp. And of course, the real hardball skeptics are even going to say he never did it properly. So you talked about Russ Grease and his experimentation in that area. What is making you optimistic at this point about the range of experiments that are being done with the PAP engine? Basically, a way to exploit this plasma energy.
I think Russ is on the right track that he published in his paper. He says we'll start with one cylinder and show that it has some anomalous force and an anomalous electromagnetic pulse that comes off of this when it discharges. And then the goal is to feed that pulse to the second cylinder and drive it. And as far as I know, I don't think anybody has gotten it that far of making a two-cylinder device yet. I know that Bob Broner has been very open, and he gave a presentation at last year's Tesla conference, which I think really helped inspire Russ. And he's been focused just on the making a nice big force on the piston, but not really effectively tapping the electromagnetic pulse that comes off of the collapsing plasmoids. And I felt that the superior, or not superior as much as easier to do experiments, would be along lines of working with the electrolyzers. I feel that it might be happening when we look for the secondary gas that I hypothesized to exist, a heavier than air gas that comes from these electrolyzers. And George Weissman talks about storing it in a small little bottle, taking the lid off the bottle, letting the hydrogen vent away, and showing that you still have a burnable gas that's hugging the bottom of it. I think Omasa has been able to make this, and the reason I point to these experiments, I see the similarity. In both cases, I see this vortex ring template-like form coming into existence, and then when it's converted to a plasma, it immediately takes a plasmoid form, and that's when the magical surge of energy occurs in the system. They are obviously working with the inert gases, like in the PAP engine, really is convincing if such a system can be made self-running, because now there is absolutely no chance of a combustible gas. There's no hydrogen. There's no real heat, expand hot air to make the piston move. It's a closed system. It's only moving by the anomalous plasma force. Such a thing would be extremely convincing, obviously, if it could self-run and others could do it.
I can tell you that in all the electrolysis experiments I did, I was looking for some of these anomalies that people were talking about. I was never able to devise an experiment that could prove or disprove. So, from my point of view, verdict is still out. I can say that when the gas that is the result of single vent electrolysis, that people refer to as HHO as a matter of convenience, is ignited, there is an energetic pulse of some sort that is electrical in nature. Now, I've never been able to figure out a way to use it effectively or do anything with it, but it's measurable and it's there. Do you think that in a roundabout way I might have seen something of what you're talking about and just been too stupid to realize it?
I think you have seen it, and I don't know if it's stupid. The fact that you did recognize it and were able to measure it and notice it is credit to you, because this is an anomaly. We should not be just burning hydrogen, should not be putting out electromagnetic pulses typically. The type of experiment that I think would be valuable would be to gather up the these gases and vent away to hydrogen and study the residual gas. I think the closest person to that is Omasa, who uses vibrating paddles to make a cavitating effect in the water, and he seems to get a lot more of that gas. Sort and Gourley have a patent application in where they claim to be harvesting the middle set of bubbles from their electrolysis setup to harvest this secondary gas. I would love to see this done in university laboratory. Chris Ekman was he was an undergraduate at Idaho State University. He's claimed to have done that very thing. Isolate this gas by venting away the hydrogen and studying it in the lab at the university. And they would see a water cluster gas exhibiting many of the properties of Brown's gas. But at least he was able to isolate the pure form of this secondary gas and basically vent away the hydrogen so he could study it.
And that's a good place to break, Moray. I get the impression you've got the show clock in front of you, know exactly where these breaks are coming in. Folks, please do stand by. We'll be back for more with Moray King right after these very important commercial announcements. I tell you, those bumpers seem to get longer every day. Well, to the audience, yes, I had indeed originally scheduled Jeremy Rys, who's well known as AlienScientist, to be my guest this evening. And doggone it, he just now came live, and I'm going to try to add him to the call here. Let's see here. Apparently he had some internet difficulties. Let's see here.
Not enough donuts.
Yeah, it's one of those things. If you don't give those guys, let's see, if you don't give those guys in the black Suburban their due, they'll mess with you. Needless to say, at this point, we have both Moray King and Jeremy Rys. Jeremy, how you doing, man? I was just joking with the audience here that you must not have given donuts to the guys in the black Suburban out in front of your house, and that's why your internet connection croaked on you. He's acting like he's not hearing me.
Yeah, I got it. I got my sound working now.
Yeah. We were picking on you. We figured you had not given donuts to the guys in the black Suburban parked out in front of your house.
Yeah, I don't know. The black helicopter is flying over now that I'm talking about this kind of stuff.
In any case, Jeremy, we were talking a little bit about this. I'm sure you're somewhat familiar with the PAP engine. It's one of the technologies that have been out there for a while. You weren't around to fill us in on the cold fusion aspect, so Moray and I got off on a totally different tangent.
All right.
Do you have any thoughts on the PAP engine, so we can kind of stay with our current conversation for the moment, and then I'll be more than happy to let you branch off into the cold fusion aspect, because frankly, that's really what I'd like to talk about.
Well, I just really wanted to talk about that IAP course at MIT that was put on in January by Mitchell Schwartz and Peter Hagelstein, and I went to here in Cambridge and attended that lecture that was put on by Peter Hagelstein and Mitchell Schwartz. So I wanted to really talk about that, but if you guys want to talk about the PAP engine, I guess we could
go for
there.
it. It's one of those things where in tonight's presentation, it's one of those nights where it seemed like everything went caca. So we'll go off in a half a dozen different directions tonight. What do you think?
That sounds good.
So go ahead, take it away. What can you tell us about that?
I don't really know so much about the PAP engine. I know about the Defcalion and the I haven't really heard of this PAP engine, to be honest with you.
That's the noble gas engine that Joseph Papp came up with some years back. There's a couple who are experimenting with it now, but it's we can take it in what direction you wanted to go. Let's talk about the cold fusion aspect, because I know that's what you came in here to discuss tonight, and I don't want to go too far afield.
Right. Well, I mean, there's lots of different experiments going on in cold fusion right now, but the essential thing is that it's a low-energy nuclear reaction which is taking place, which is responsible for the excess heat that's produced and the excess energy that's coming out of these. The original Pons and Fleischmann experiment, which is put on by one of the world's leading electrochemists that came out with that, and they was pretty much ridiculed into obscurity for coming out with that technology. It was sort of I guess a way that you persuade scientists and really academic people to steer away from a given topic. And of course, who's doing the persuading? I could get into that. I mean, there's all sorts of tangents you can go off when you talk about this kind of stuff.
Well, when it comes to academia, I mean, I would think that for the most part, these guys are afraid of ruining their own personal credibility, because that determines whether or not they're going to maintain tenure. I mean, they're
right. They're scared of the reputation. That's the main way that you can manipulate the mainstream science, and it's very effective with these journals and creating these. What they have done is create prestigious institutions or get their people inside of. They'll literally attack journals that publish stuff like that's related to cold fusion, any sort of information that's related to cold fusion. And there's a documented history of this. Like I mean, I have papers that were given to me by the Mitchell Schwartz, the lecturer I attended at MIT, that he said the mainstream journals will not touch this paper. And I said, well, what's in it? And he said basically that paper describes exactly what to do and what not to do in order to get the experiment to work, and what conditions exactly under which it occurs, and what sort of things make it not work right.
one of the arguments that's regularly put forward, arguing against cold fusion, is that we see events, but we do not see a reliable process. And obviously, for something to be commercially viable, it has to be controllable. You have to be able to throw a switch, have it work reliably, first time, every time. And the argument I'm hearing from many is that, there are interesting events taking place, but they're not reliable and cannot be harnessed. Are you saying that there are those in academia who are publishing papers that would contradict that?
Apparently there are papers out there that would very much contradict that, and they will not allow them to be published in mainstream journals. And lots of people have replicated these results as well. And I can dig out the paper that was given to me if you want. I can email it to you as well. You can post a link to it. It's a really weird name. It's very complicated, and I have it somewhere around here.
I'll
grab it later.
We'll address that one during a break. Bottom line, give us the executive summary. What are they? Can you give us an executive summary of what they're saying?
Well, I mean, I went to this week-long lecture put on by Peter Hagelstein and Mitchell Schwartz. There, Peter Hagelstein spoke for 4 or 5 days, and then Mitchell Schwartz spoke for 2 days. And Mitchell Schwartz is more on the experimental side of the cold fusion experimentation that's been going on at MIT currently, and Dr. Peter Hagelstein is more the theoretical guy, and he really went over a lot of different stuff. One of the things was what's called the Volmer-Tafel regime, and that's basically has to do with palladium loading in cathodes, and there's a lot of stuff that has to do with palladium loading in cathodes that makes the reaction work right or not work right, and essentially they have to get the loading above a certain percentage, above about 0.8 concentration ratio of deuterium or hydrogen to palladium. So if they don't achieve that, then they're not going to get the reaction. And if they have leakage due to what's called like cracks that occur in the palladium, sometimes what happens is when you pump so many ions into this lattice, it expands because you're literally filling it with more atoms. So it expands, and sometimes it expands unevenly and creates cracks or fracturing in the palladium cathodes. So it's very important that they use right type of metal and what Mitchell Schwartz was talking about is nanotechnology, essentially. What will be nanotechnology to build better reactors and really to understand the regime in which this reaction takes place, and the fact that there is no theoretical there's no like solid theory which is can really be attributed to like what's going on quantum mechanically to actually achieve this cold fusion. I mean, the main argument, if you look at Huizinga's book, I mean, his main argument is the Coulomb barrier, and how do you overcome that Coulomb barrier without the incredibly high temperatures and pressures which are normally associated with hot fusion.
We're coming up on a break here in about 30 seconds, so I'm not sure I want. But when we come back from the break, you are somewhat familiar with the what are represented as being commercially viable cold fusion-ish type devices as represented by Defcalion and Rossi.
And
how do these compare to the academic model that says, this is how it should work? And of course, I'm going to hear that bumper music playing in my head, and here it comes. So I'll leave you to think about that question while we pause for some blatantly commercial announcements. We'll be right back. All right, I'll tell you, these bumpers are getting longer and longer. You're cutting into my talk time, damn it. All right, we're back from that blatantly commercial interruption, and we, as the break started, Moray and Jeremy got off onto a topic that would, way over my head. So I'm going to ask them to, try and redo that conversation, but bring it down to about a sixth grade educational level, so where a poor old Southern boy like me can kind of understand what they're talking about. But we kind of left this with a comparison between these guys who are talking about bringing out commercial gadgets that a guy like me might be able to run down to Walmart and buy on the end cap of Walmart here pretty soon. How does this compare to academia's picture of how it's supposed to work? And then I would really like to hear you guys knock this idea around. This is a fairly long segment. I think we've got about 10 minutes to try and get these arguments on the table.
Right. Well, I'm talking about 48 hours of at least of like lectures that I've went and filmed.
Shoot, I ought to be able to summarize that in 5 minutes, right?
Go to coldfusionnow.org, or you look up my name. You can find these lectures that I went and filmed. And I don't know, these guys are interesting. Dr. Hagelstein is a really, really smart guy. He's an excellent theoretician, and Dr. Mitchell Schwartz is sort of like the experimental guy, and he's got his own company called Jet Energy Incorporated. I can send you the links to that. It's not always easy to find, but he's got some interesting cold fusion reactors that he's built. Nothing commercially available yet, but he's got just some small-scale reactors which are really reliable, and he sort of builds them to be used and to send out to other labs so that they can use his cathode with the way he has it all set up. It's this NANOR resistor is what it's called, the NANOR, NANOR. If you want to search for that on Google, you can find it. So that's the sort of the NANOR was one of the things he developed by this Jet Energy, his lab over in Wellesley, Mass. And I'm trying to get over there and film. Of course, they're really reluctant to let anyone near their labs and stuff, because I guess their lab at MIT got broken into and some of their equipment got messed with and sabotaged a little bit at MIT. So I don't know if he will trust me to go over there and film inside his laboratory and stuff. I'd like to be able to do that and get more exposure to sort of the academic side of things, that what's going on at MIT, because that might get the attention of the mainstream scientific community, which is really, like, I think, a big obstacle in the way of getting cold fusion out there is really breaking through it on the scientific level with the mainstream. And, if the thing that I think that might happen now, which I was a little bit worried about, is some of these commercially available things might be con artists who come out with these devices that don't really work, but they're trying to sell it anyway to make a quick buck or something. And that what that might end up doing is discrediting, cold fusion as a whole, or who knows. But I'm not saying that any of these people are doing that, but I'm just saying that's one of the things I was really skeptical of. Like, who do you trust? These guys are from MIT. Are they going to be like the other guys from MIT that sabotaged the original cold fusion experiments that Eugene Malolov exposed and sort of basically raked them over the coals for that, and ended up losing his job and his life in the long run. But I don't know. It's interesting to say who do you trust in who's got the right idea, and I think going with academia and keeping a skeptical mind to everything is I think the way to go, because if you just I don't try not to believe anything unless I can be able to prove it, and I look for ways that I can prove it. And with science, the real way to do that is experiment. Of course, experiments in cold fusion aren't cheap, and there's no funding for it. And there's no funding for it because the corporations, there's laws out there set up by the Department of Energy that they can't patent the ideas. The patent office won't grant them patents, so no one's going to fund this because there's no way to make any money off of it, really, because they're going to block you from getting a patent on your device, and they're going to block you from trying to sell it and monetize it. So really, why would anyone fund this unless they were just a philanthropist looking to throw money toward a good cause?
Moray, ideas? Let's let Moray weigh in on this.
I agree that there's academic suppression going on. Look at the way they treated Bacchus back in the early days, about in the 90s, where they tried to throw him out of the university because he dared to not only suggest that transmutation was occurring in the cells, he was actually measuring it. And they couldn't throw him out because he was a tenured professor, but they had a big trial and everything else, and he ended up winning the case, and he didn't leave Texas A&M until he finally retired. But there's a definite, in academia, there's a huge ridicule factor. If you step out of the paradigm in any way, they're gonna try to throw you out.
Right. I wonder if the Department of Energy or some of these other men in black sort of people don't have shills that work for them that write threats or harass anyone that sort of comes out in academia and talks about this stuff, like writes them complaints or letters, complaining or basically, calling them frauds or ridiculing them, or what sort of things are set up to do, and who's really responsible for that? Because the early media things that went on with cold fusion, it was just a debacle. It was all these people just trying to, it was a witch hunt, they were convinced that this was a fraud and that they were trying to expose frauds, and they were just on a head hunt, and I don't know. I don't know if that's the right approach to take. Sometimes I've tended to have taken that approach with a lot of the free energy inventors that have been out there that make claims and stuff. But with cold fusion, I don't know. It's not on the same level because there's so many really credentialed academics that have went and did the experiments and said, no, we got positive results. And they, of course, get ridiculed and outcast. And the people that get negative results get published, and they get, on Fox News or in Time magazine or all this other stuff. But the people that get the similar results, they end up going off on their own to do their own cold fusion research independently. And are all these people just crazy? Is cold fusion? No, it's definitely not. There's low energy nuclear reaction going on there. They've measured the isotopes, they measured the tritium signatures in the SPEWAR experiments, and people that ridicule cold fusion haven't done the research into it. They haven't looked at the data. They haven't looked at the research that's out there.
Well, a couple of fellows were on my show not too long ago representing the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project, and part of what they're doing is trying to come up with a relatively low-cost experimental widget that they can sell to universities for a price that's affordable, where they can see what's being referred to as cold fusion or low-energy nuclear reactions taking place, can document it and see it in a laboratory environment. Have you seen any of the work of Shalani and the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project, and do you have any thoughts on the veracity of what they're attempting to do?
Well, I think there's a couple people that are trying to build these low-cost cold fusion reactor devices. The Nanor that Mitchell Schwartz is building for his Jet Energy Incorporated, that's a similar idea, and he's building these basically these nanoscale. They're nano. I don't know how he builds them and stuff. I'm sure it's proprietary information and stuff.
Is he meeting really with any commercial success? I mean, are people?
I don't know. I don't know.
Frankly, people vote with their dollars. I mean, we can talk about, Daddy Warbucks, Superman, or Green Lantern coming in to save us, but, people typically
this
decide.
Memorial project, though, I think if he can successfully build a low cost reactor device that works reliably and consistently, that's the biggest problem. I mean, you look at the wars going on with the people who edit Wikipedia about cold fusion and why they won't allow positive reviews or information links to positive references to be published in Wikipedia. It all gets taken down and edited, and basically the thing that's on Wikipedia says it's not reliable, it's not repeatable, and reliably and consistently. So that's all that's needed, really. I mean, if you can make something that will produce excess heat and excess energy that can be measured in a laboratory, and it does so reliably and consistently, so that every time it's tried, it does it, then I think you have something to work with. But still, it's going to be rejected by a lot of the scientific community because this doesn't fit in with conventional theory. And I think that what's missing is really has to do with what's going on at the quantum level, where the photon comes from, and sort of some of those other questions that haven't been answered by modern quantum theory.
Well, I tell you, this show got off to kind of a slow start, but now we've got a really good discussion going, and and I'm looking at the time, and they're going to drag us off the stage in about 2 minutes. Now, before they blow us out of here, Moray King, I would like you to have a quick opportunity to promote your books. Please tell the folks in the audience the titles and if they're so inclined, where they might be able to buy them. And I'd like you to leave at least a minute or so for Jeremy, so I can let him do some blatant self-promotion as well.
Oh, the books are easy to get. Just Google my name, Moray B. King. I'm spelled like the eel, Moray, and from those sites you can get to the books. What I like to say about the cold fusion, the cracking in the Patterson cell, he made perfect beads that he could separate good beads from bad beads. When he loads them, he would crack them and get the heat anomaly every time, and that was in the mid-90s. But it was not a reliable cell for a commercial device, but at least you get his experiments to go every time. I'll pass it over to you.
All right, and Jeremy, like I say, we got off to a real slow start. You know what that means, don't you? That means I'm going to have to reschedule you for another visit so I can hear more on this topic. We only got part of the dose we were expecting.
Yeah, in the meantime, you might want to go on and check out coldfusionnow.org. It's my friend Ruby's site, and some of you may be familiar with that already. But I went and filmed those MIT lectures here in Cambridge for Ruby at coldfusionnow.org and have those posted there on the Cold Fusion Now website. It's on YouTube, Cold Fusion Now, all one word.
Cold Fusion Now.
Yeah, Cold Fusion Now with 2 N's, Cold Fusion Now. So you can go and find those there. It's some very interesting other materials on coldfusionnow.org on the website, and AlienScientist.com. Send me an email.
Alrighty. Well, I tell you, I knew they were going to get us, but we did manage to do our blatant self-promotion. So I think we punched all the tickets we came here to punch today. And to the audience, thank you so much for watching the Alternative Energy Hour. Please stay tuned. Charlie McGrath will be along in just a moment with the rest of tonight's presentation. Take care now.